Thank you. We'll now move to our budget item of a presentation of the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget for the city of Longview. This item will be presented by City Manager Keith Bonds. Mr. Bonds.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I appreciate this opportunity to present the budget this year. This is my third one to be able to do so, and really proud of all my department heads and the division managers who have continued with their efforts to deliver services to our citizens at reasonable cost. And I especially want to thank the budget team, Mary Ann Miller, Angela Cole, and Sean Hara, have helped me out the last couple months, and they've really worked hard, and proud of this budget that I'm going to present. So first, go over some assumptions that we had going into this budget season. And the first being, not a big surprise, our economy has been very negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and we are anticipating a multi-year budget impact. Our sales tax revenues have been down significantly. We have received preliminary property value estimates of up 1%. Our certified values don't come in until July 25, but we are not anticipating asking for a tax rate change in any way. Revenue losses from other fees and fines are going to be down as well. We have been assisted by the CARES Act with funding of approximately $4.5 million, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We have assumed that we were going to reduce expenditures across the board and use some available fund balances during this recovery period. We're also going to propose a delay in the needed rate increases for water, sewer, and sanitation services. So this year in review, entering March of this year, everything was looking really well. Finances were in overall good shape. Our sales tax collections were up 4.2%. Every month to that point had been up compared to the year previously. Our property tax collections were on schedule, which they usually are. Our expenditures were all in line with the budget, but on March 16th, we got the news that the schools were going to close till the end of the year after spring break. On March 25th, our local shelter-in-place order had taken place. A week later, the statewide stay-at-home order had taken place, and it wasn't until April 27th where Governor Abbott announced the phase 1 reopening. So the other things that occurred after that, we had estimated our sales tax loss to be almost $2.4 million. And our other revenue losses from fees and fines are going to be around $1.275 million. And we instituted a hiring freeze in March, which is now built to 25 positions currently. We did eliminate a street paving project, which is valued at $1.2 million. We eliminated the Guthrie Creek Trail parking lot project, was valued at $300,000. Again, we had cut spending across departments, and we did receive our first installment of the CARES Act funding of $898,000. This diagram shows the sales tax comparison month to month. And you can see in October, November, December, January, February, March, we're all up. And it wasn't until April we saw a downturn. In June, we saw a 23% downturn, but in July it was only 3.47, I think. But we have conservatively estimated August and September collections to be down significantly. So this is a slide that we've shown several times over the period of years, so some of the council members may be familiar with how this looks, but this is the year-end estimate for FY20. So this time last year, we thought we were going to have a beginning fund balance on October 1, 2019 of $15.571 million. But after everything was over and after the audit was completed, we actually began the year October 1, 2019 with a fund balance of $16.279 million, which was $708,000 more than we had anticipated. So if you take the revenues that we had anticipated this year, and we went ahead and added the $898,000 of care funds, we thought we were going to have $71.1 million. However, it turned out to be, even including the CARES Act funding, only $67.498 million, which is 3.6 below. So in turn, expenditures, after we added in the encumbrances, We had planned to spend $74.8 million. However, I think we're going to end up spending only 71.1 or $3.7 million under budgeted expenditures, which you can then see added to a surplus in the overall budget. So we're going to end up with more in the reserve fund that we'd anticipated, $12.669 million. So this is what we're proposing for FY21. So you can see in the middle column, the $12.669 million would be our beginning fund balance October 1, 2020. And our revenues, we are hoping to be at $71.391 million. However, I'd like to point out that 3.6 of that is CARES Act funds. However, our expenditures, we're going to be at 72.166, and I'll talk a little bit more about why the expenditures are more this year than the year-end estimate from last year. So the ending fund balance is the thing to look at. The bottom right-hand corner, we're going to use $775,000 of the reserve fund. So we added $775 last year. We're going to use $775 this coming year. So we're about in the same position, which is still pretty good, looking at the $4.676 million above the 10% minimum. So we'll talk a little bit about how we got to those numbers. Now, this is the sales tax comparison year to year. So this is like a 10-year window. You can see that our low year is in 2017 at 19.435 million. At 485 million, while our high was 22.746 million in 2019. So you can see our projections for next year, not as strong as what we thought we were going to be this year, but still at 22.169 million. Property tax revenue, our current budget proposal includes this estimated 1% increase. And again, those are the preliminary values from Gregg County Appraisal District. Our certified values will be available July 25th, and we're certainly hopeful that they have had a conservative preliminary estimate and that the certified values will be more than 1%. But nevertheless, due to Senate Bill 2, we're capped at a maximum of 3.5% increase without voter approval. And I'd like to point out that these property values, the FY 2021 taxes values, are based on pre-pandemic property valuations. So we anticipate FY 21-22 property valuations to decrease for the non-residential properties. So our property tax revenues are estimated $32.883 million. This includes maintenance and operations and the debt service. And you can see how the property taxes continually go up. It's a 3.19% average increase over the past 10 years. So this might be a familiar chart as well, the matchstick chart. And you can see this is our overall property tax rates. The only increases you'll see over the last 10 years have been due to voter-approved general fund bonds and their associated debt. So the change in 2014 and the change in 2020 were all due to those bond elections. So it's currently at 0.5589 or 55.89 cents per $100 valuation. I would like to point out that due to the bond debt refunding recently, we were able to decrease the portion of the rate attributed to debt from 0.1747 to 0.1673, which allowed us to increase the M&O from 38.42 to 39.16. So overall, the rate is still going to be 55.89. So this is the general fund revenue pie chart. $45 million or so is from sales and property tax, or 63% of the budget, and that's typical what we see here in Longview. This is a little detail of the CARES Act revenue. We're eligible to receive $55 per capita, or up to $4.5 million overall. We plan to utilize this for expenses associated with public safety personnel responding to the pandemic. We already have received $898 and plan to receive the remaining $3.6 million in this coming up fiscal year. So some highlights of the expenditures, number one being the healthcare expenses have increased 8% this year. We have our normal inflationary increases over our operations. Our information services are going to increase $296,296. Kind of interesting number, but the general fund is going to see a new expense this year. We're required to lease our fiber optic network from the local cable company. And we're also going to see some major upgrades to some computer infrastructure in the police department as well as in other general fund areas. We have a $200,000 extra expense to the Gregg County Jail contract this year. And as I mentioned, we cut the paving project out of FY20, and so we're going to build it back into FY21 of $1.4 million. Now, this is half of the $2.8 million requested by the Public Works Department, and will obviously leave us a year behind in our maintenance. So some of the other things that we removed from the budget, some unfunded budget requests, we removed a ladder truck from the fire department, $1.302 million. However, we are going to look at some loan options that certainly would allow us to have the truck, but have a much lower cost, especially the first year. And we have unfortunately have to cut the Guthrie Creek Trail parking lot once again, as well as some playground replacement projects, and we're going to do no drainage project this year. So the general fund capital expenditure line item, even though we budgeted $2 million in 2020, we are only going to spend $1.6 million. You can see a big drop, only $524,000 next year. So I'd like to remind us all that personnel is 72.6% of the general fund expenses. So it's very difficult for us to move the needle much in cutting expenses in the general fund without cutting personnel. So we're going to continue our hiring freeze. We're going to freeze vacant positions as they become available this year, except for the uniformed officers, certified police, fire, and public safety communications. As those positions become open, we will refill those. So 4 of the previously mentioned 25 frozen positions have been permanently cut from the budget, and the remaining will be frozen as long as we need to keep them that way. So estimated savings of these frozen and cut positions is $1.152 million. We're proposing no changes to employee pay. However, the public safety employees will receive their regular step increases. So the health fund, we made significant changes back in FY18-19, where we added the health savings account alternative, which we attracted 36.8% of our employees to take advantage of that. We also increased the city contribution employee premiums at that time. The fund balance has been improved to over $2 million because of those changes. So some highlights for this year, we're going to save $247,000 in third-party administrator fees, $288,000 in prescription drug rebates, $40,000 in life and disability premiums, $30,000 in savings to wellness program. However, we're going to see a $170,000 increase in cost to the stop loss premium. And we're projecting a almost $1.5 million or 13.5% increase cost for medical, dental, and prescription claims. So due to those fluctuations of charges in the health fund, we're going to need to increase the city's contribution by 8%. So that we per employee change from $10,850 to $11,705 or $525,825 increase in the general fund. We're going to have no increase in the employee premium. Again, Senate Bill 2 says that the total compensation for first responders may not be reduced for this year, and insurance premiums count towards the total compensation calculation. So no change in employee side or the premiums. We are going to make some small deductible increases for both plans, and we're going to continue to provide a $500 per employee incentive for those that will take the HSA plan. Our one-time capital expenses is a very short list this year. One item, the enterprise resource planning software, payment 3 of 4, $400,000. This is a bar chart where we've used over the past few years where we indicate in red the 10% minimum council adopted reserve fund, 10% of the expenditures. The blue indicates a portion of the reserve funds that is available to be used, and the green is the portion that actually was allocated by councils during those years. So that shows the last 9 years, with 2015 being a large use of reserve fund, as well as last year we used 3.1 million, but we didn't use all 3.1. We ended up only using, we saved 775. So the 775 shows the small green portion that we're proposing in the 2021. So overall, again, general fund expenditures, 72,166,000. 46.9%, 46.9 million budgeted for police and fire, which is 65% of general fund. Pretty typical of what we see. So again, this is the repeat slide that I showed earlier, where it shows bottom right-hand corner dipping into the reserve fund, 775,000, which is again about the amount that we placed in it last year. So I'll go over a quick update of the 2018 bond election. So November 2018, voters approved 104.21 million. We've only issued 51.325 million of that. So the public safety side, police station, we're final design. We're almost ready to bid this and hopefully get started and bidding it in August. Fire Station 5 received bids July, yesterday, day before yesterday, and really turned out really well. I think everyone will be excited about that. We'll award the bids August 6th. Police Fire Training Center, final design underway, and we have finalized out the property from and received it from LeadCo at the business park. So on the street portion of the bond, we're all under design. Hyde Moberly entryway is under design, as well as Cotton Street. Streetscape project, Fairmont and Railroad have the utility project sections of portions of those projects are being designed at this time. And parks wise, Lear Park and the citywide parks project will be asking council to award those projects this evening. The Arboretum, the last phase construction is just now starting. Broughton Recreation Center is in preliminary design phase. And the Cargill Long Trail, we are still negotiating with a pipeline project and reviewing some options on that project. So the second phase, we will not be issuing any debt this coming fiscal year. We're going to hold off till FY21-22 to get these other projects, the spend down on those a little bit. And we anticipate a tax rate probably in 22-23 and maybe in 21-22. We'll see what the dates, what the schedule is of issuing that debt. So the phase 2 projects will continuation of phase 1 projects, of course, and we're going to place Fire Station 8 into that, and the existing PD building renovation. When they get out of, police department gets out of that building, we're going to utilize that building for some other city offices. So as I've previously stated, we're not proposing any rate increase this year for water, wastewater, or sanitation, but I would like to describe what we had to do to avoid these rate increase requests. So, and also preparing for next year. So as everyone knows, the rates are set so that revenues cover expenses, and we really try not to have very many rate increases. So last one being last year at 2.17, and we had one in 2014 a little over 2%. We have delayed rate increases primarily due to savings related to decreased debt payments and the refinancing of bonds. And our operating expenses, though, still continue to increase. So we have simply reduced project funding by deferring water and sewer line replacements just to meet the budget this year. This is a chart Mr. McPhee has built the last few years showing 10-year trend in historic pumpage, and it continues to decline as our customers conserve their natural resources. So due to that, our the customer affordability index is a little bit affected by that. This is an industry measure for relative appropriateness of rates. So the annual average billing divided by the median income is only 1.08% here in Longview, which shows us to be very affordable. So cash funding versus debt. We continue to try to cash fund capital improvement projects, and the utility fund could be debt-free by 2029. However, we see this debt coverage ratio continues to slip. And that is a ratio that you get by dividing your net operating income by your debt service. So the net operating income can only increase if we have more usage, consumption goes up, or the rates go up, or the debt gets smaller. And so the debt continues to get smaller, but our income is getting smaller as well. So that's we'll have to continue watching that closely. This was the requested rate increase from the utility, 2.13%. As we said, we're not going to propose that. That rate increase would have generated $938,000 in additional revenue, which would continue, give them the ability to continue to cash fund necessary projects and to maintain some debt coverage ratio. But the delay increase, what we're going to do is we're going to defer some of these projects and some system management maintenance projects and utilize fund reserves for operations. And we're also going to have to consider utilize some debt to conduct some necessary projects if we have to do some projects. So on the sanitation side, it's the rate history. We had a 65-cent increase back in 2008, a $1 increase in 2015, a $1.25 increase in 2020. Current rates are $17.20 per month. So the Sanitation Group originally asked a couple of months ago for a $1.25 increase to cash fund some capital improvement replacements or some trucks or truck bodies. And then that would also help them to restore their fund balance. They had an option even at that time to reduce eliminate the recycling program, which would require no rate increase. So to avoid the rate increase this year, what they're going to do is utilize a loan for capital equipment replacement. And we're going to continue the recycling program, but just to warn you that there might need to be a rate increase in the future. So overall city budget, the bottom right-hand corner shows us to be $160,660, which looks like $8 million different from last year, and it is that much less, but it's mainly due to the middle column there, middle row, special revenue funds, where we have decreased from 33.687 million to 26,072, and that's because we had a CARES Act fund deposit for the Longview Transit, 3.8 million or so, and I think Guthrie Creek Trail Project grant from TxDOT was a 3 million range. So that's the main difference, and the other funds went up and down a little bit, but that's the overall picture for this year on the overall city budget. So the calendar for the remaining part of the year, July 16 is today, so we're going to set the public hearing dates. The next meeting is going to be August 6th. We're going to discuss the budget a little more, have the fee change discussion, a preliminary vote on the tax rate. 3 meetings, unfortunately, in August. The next week, the 13th, we're going to have a public hearing on the budget, public hearing on the tax rate, adopt the budget, adopt the fee changes, and have a separate vote to ratify the rate. And Thursday, August 20th, will be a council meeting where you will adopt the tax rate and hear from LeadCo about their budget. So again, thanks for listening. Sorry it took me so long, but a lot to cover there. And I guess if you have any questions at this time, I'd be glad to try to answer a few.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. We'll be digging into this budget over the course of the next few council meetings, of course, but does any council member have initial questions or comments for Mr. Bonds at this time?
Yes, if you don't mind. Keith, we usually get the budget proposal from you later in July after our certified tax roll is released, and this year it's earlier, and we're having to base it on an estimate. Why is that?
Well, it's due to the Senate Bill 2 requirement that if we go over 3.5% over the property tax, the values, if we go over that much, it's called no new revenue. If the revenues go over 3.5%, then we have to call an election. So the election would be in the November election, and I can't remember the exact number of days, but it has to be like 70 something days before that point where you have to call the election. And so that date is in the mid part of August. So we have to have you guys to approve the budget prior to that point in case you wanted to call an election. That
Okay.
makes sense.
So this based on an estimate is going to be from now on due to Senate Bill 2?
Best we can tell, unless the state government changes the rules, which
Okay,
right
so,
now
but
we don't know.
currently, thanks to our legislature, we're having to prepare our general fund budget based on incomplete data. Is that a fair statement?
I would say so, yes, sir.
Okay, well, I'll now get off my soapbox.
Okay.
But
This year,
Mr. Moore,
say again, Mayor?
we will have those certified values before we finalize the budget.
Right. And yeah. So next year's property value is based on pre-COVID numbers, January 1st, 2020. However, you do anticipate in the commercial, industrial, personal property categories that because of the downturn in the economy, because of COVID, that we probably will see a lower tax base. And I tend to agree that will take place. Just a comment, it's fortunate we're going to be considering a general bond refunding at this time tonight, because it will give us some flexibility on our debt tax levies for the next few years. And what I would like us to consider between now and the time we adopt the budget is to maybe adjust some of the principal payments in the refunding bonds to increase our savings in the early years, especially in fiscal 21, 22, to maybe soften the blow, if you will, on a possible decline in the tax base. We have the wherewithal to do that. And then lastly, I truly applaud you and your staff for presenting us a budget without a tax rate increase or a water, sewer, or sanitation increase. I know that could not have been easy at all. However, you have presented us some options on the water, sewer, sanitation side. And is it an accurate statement that we can get by without those increases this coming year, but we're delaying the inevitable in 21, 22, and possibly larger increases? Is that a true statement?
I would say that was a true statement. Yes, sir.
Okay. So obviously, I haven't studied all the copious pages of numbers you have in our budget book, but I will try to do that between now and the next meeting. And then maybe I would like to meet with you and your public works staff and talk about that, if you will allow me to do that.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Okay. All right. Mayor, thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any other council members have questions for Mr. Bonds at this time?
Good job, Keith.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to just take a minute, Keith, to tell you and all the team that worked on this. I know we've all been working on it for quite some time, and it's just when you think you're getting over the hump. We had the hard budget in 2015 when I was first elected, and we've seemed to come a long way since then. And then something like this happens, and we're back scrambling again. But it's a product of the fact that we budgeted well for the last few years, that we're able to bring a budget forward this year that has no tax increase for our citizens, and able to maintain the services that we can maintain at this time. I appreciate the hiring freeze. I know that's a difficult thing, but it's something that we have to do at this point in time in order to make this work. But I applaud you all. We have a long way to go on this budget. We'll have lots of questions I'm sure we'll be asking over the next few weeks. But to this point, I can say I'm pleased with the budget, and I think we will be able to bring a budget forward to our citizens that will be very, very acceptable. So thank you all very much.